everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I have another video with Big Gazza. He's a good boy. I just answered the door to the man delivering my dad's Amazon stuff, and he was very surprised to see a lizard on my shoulder. So he had a little pet and we had a little quick chat about what he is and stuff. I think he was amazed. He looked really interested rather than scared, which is very nice. And it was a teaching moment. So I thought we'd do a little bit more of a casual video again. I'm trying to get quite a few done just so I can schedule a few. I feel really awful for neglecting this channel because I was really getting into making these kind of animal education videos and I really love it. So I have got a bit of a cop-out one today, but for those of you that maybe don't own reptiles rather than those of you that do, I mean, I'm sure those of you that do have also had these kinds of questions, but I asked for a load of questions on various kind of Instagrams and from people that I know of, like what they want to know, and I kind of highlighted the most common ones and I'm going to go through the answers with you in this video. So the first question I get a lot is how long do they live for? Now Gary, the average lifespan in the wild is anywhere between sort of about 5 and 8 years. Obviously in captivity they live longer. The average I would say is about 10 years, but I have had reports of people's bearded dragons living up to 14 and 15 years. It really does depend on your husbandry, how well you're looking after them, and just the individual as well. I'm kind of banking on at least 10 for Gaz. Who knows, maybe he'll go to 12, we just don't know. But the average in the wild is obviously significantly less because these guys do get predated on and they can get sick more easily and all that kind of stuff. But in captivity I would say generally between about 8 and 12 years. How did you get into reptiles? So I actually got into reptiles because our cat died a few years ago. And I'm really ashamed to say that I was in PetSmart? No, Pets at Home, which is a big kind of chain store here. And I saw a gecko and I didn't know what it was. I had never seen them before. I kind of did a little bit of research, asked my parents if I could have one, and they said yes. Bear in mind, I was 21, 22 at the time. So I was in fact a fully fledged adult who was perfectly capable of looking after an animal. And a crested gecko, if you are going to start with something, although small and delicate, they don't require heat and lighting necessarily, depending on where you kind of live. In the UK they do fine at room temperature, obviously just keep them out of sunlight and drafts and things. He's gonna jump. I'm watching you, bud. I'm watching you. So it is really important to do your research, and I did an impulse buy. They wouldn't give him to me on the day, which is really good. I think that is a really good policy. I did set his tank up and stuff before, and he is in fact in the same tank still, because I did get a decent sized one, and he wasn't actually a baby when I got him. He was in fact a juvenile. My kind of first experience was kind of an impulse buy, and I'm quite ashamed to say that I don't recommend you buy from big chain pet stores at all, and I don't recommend you do what I did, but that's how I did it. And then I continued to research after I had him as well. He is still in the same tank. He's now nearly about 5 years old now, and yeah, that kind of kicked it off for me. I was obsessed with him. I was absolutely obsessed, researching, watching loads of videos, and then obviously I branched out into finding kind of more of a reptile community, and I was looking at royal pythons or ball pythons. I was bearded dragons, all kinds of lizards. I mean, I love snakes, I just don't have one yet. But my first love were lizards, really. And I'm absolutely obsessed still, 5.5 years later. So yeah, that's how I got into reptiles. How does your boyfriend feel about reptiles? My boyfriend actually used to keep a royal python. He raised it from a baby. I believe he had it for a few years actually, and he did share a house with someone else who had a bearded dragon. He loves all animals. He has a dog called Charlie who's a rescue, who is like my other son, and he's a big animal person. We both are, so he really loves them. He absolutely adores Gary and Fred. I think he's less due to his work commitments. He ended up giving his royal python away to a better home because he just didn't have the time for it. And I think as he's kind of got a little bit older and the time's gone on, I think he struggles with whether maybe we should be keeping these kinds of animals. So he loves them and he loves mine, and you know, when we move in together and stuff, I want to get a kind of rescue snake and, you know, get a couple more different kinds of animals. Also obviously do some more educational videos and stuff on here with those guys. But I think if it wasn't for me, he probably wouldn't ever have any as pets again. But he does really love them, and he has a love for all kind of nature and wildlife, and he thinks reptiles are really cool. So it's a non-issue. It's not like he's scared of them or he wouldn't handle Gary or anything. He's yeah, he likes them too. So one of the questions that I got all the time was, are they hard to look after? Now this is a really hard question to answer. Obviously I have two different species. I have a crested gecko and I have Gary, who is a bearded dragon. They're both very, very different to look after, and I would say they're both, to me, I feel like they are quite low maintenance, but then I know what they need. I don't have to think about it. It's not new to me, and they are put in that kind of beginner friendly category. I would say bearded dragons are probably a little bit more advanced because you have got to deal with timers, lights, heating equipment, things like that, and they do have a little bit more of a varied diet. You can just feed cresties on complete diet, but I would say anything can be not super hard to look after if you have the time, you are committed, and you have done your research properly, and you make sure that you devote the time to that animal. I wouldn't necessarily go in and get myself a really kind of difficult to look after chameleon or something that was really prone to certain infections and, you know, humidity cycles and all that kind of stuff, or something that required extreme heat like a Euromastix or something. Or in fact, I would say I wouldn't go in and get an iguana, even though you can impulse buy those at chain pet stores really easily. Everything kind of has its pros and cons, and I think you have to be doing the most research you possibly can to make sure that you are able to cope with these things. I personally think that these are fairly appropriate for most people with an interest in keeping reptiles, but they are, again, as I've said, very different. I don't think they're particularly hard to look after because I know a lot about them and I'm used to it now because I've done it for long enough. However, it's something that you definitely need to be looking into and making sure that you have the knowledge before you take an animal home to know that you know enough about it. The next question I get a lot, mainly from parents actually, who've seen this channel, is, are they appropriate for children? I think most things can be appropriate for children. I think slightly older children are probably better if you're going to be giving them a little bit more responsibility, but you as a parent must know that if you are allowing your child to have a pet, it is ultimately your responsibility to keep that pet alive, well, and give a very high standard of care. It is not fair to give your child a pet and just let them do what they want with it. The buck stops with you at the end of the day. And although these guys and crested geckos, leopard geckos, all of that kind of thing can be really fantastic choices for children's pets, and I also think it's a really nice thing to be encouraging children to like different kinds of animals as well, not just ones that are cute and fluffy. It's really important that you know that ultimately, if you are allowing your child to have a pet of this kind, that pet's health and well-being ultimately is your responsibility as the parent of that child. So yes, I think they can be appropriate for children, but I think that you as the parent need to know an awful lot about the animal before you hand it over to your child also. So that is something to think about. I would absolutely be up for letting my child in the future, when I have one, pick their own reptile within a scope of species that I think would be more appropriate, that we could handle as a family, etc. But I already look after them, I know a lot about them, and I would be making sure that that child is taught a lot about them and making sure that that animal is okay within my household as the responsible adult. So there we go. The last question I'm going to answer for today is one that I get so often. It's often the first thing people ask me. Do they bite? This, I get it because it's not fluffy and maybe they don't look cute to you, even though I think that they're bloody adorable. Bearded dragons, cresties, all of them. Snakes, oh my god, the little boop nose. Ugh, adorable. But do they bite? Yeah, they do bite. They can. All animals can bite. It's whether they will or not. I have had more injuries from the dog, who is just a tiny little terrier mix who is hyper as fuck, than I have ever had from Gary. Gary has never bitten me. I've got scratched up a little bit just because he has little sharp claws and stuff, but he's never turned around aggressively and tried to bite me. Of course these guys can, but it honestly is normally just because they're frightened or something. If you're handling them properly, you're not surprising them, you're not grabbing them, they're not gonna do that. It's really not an issue, I find. Now, obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but I would say animals in general aren't aggressive, they're defensive, and if they are trying to bite you, they've either had a bad experience or you frightened them. And as I say, I've never had a bad experience with a reptile. I just haven't. I've had far more bad experiences with cats and dogs, and we've always had cats in my house and I'm a big dog lover, than I ever have with reptiles. So they can, but so can your cat or your dog. So yeah, as I say, more bad experiences with fluffy cute animals than ever these scaly babies. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a little bit interesting for you. I just thought I'd answer some of the most commonly asked questions that I get all the time. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to like the video, hit that subscribe button if you're not part of the James family. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. All the links and stuff are down below. And if you like beauty and things like that, I have a much bigger channel, which I will also leave down there, that is more beauty related. Anyway, see you in the next one. Okay, bye.